Hi, and welcome to this week's Three Legs, Four Wheels F1 podcast. It's Paul here with
Dan,
Chris.
Lee, and some new technology as well.
New technology.
hello,
New
tech.
microphones, new mixing desk.
It's all very shiny.
Yeah, does this
For
count?
now.
Does this officially count as our pre-season testing then?
No. She's had some pretty vigorous work over the weekend.
Lee might have already used this new equipment.
Yeah.
Your 97,000 other shows.
About that.
But enough of that. F1.
Yes.
Well, there's not a great deal going on, is there?
It's the off season, that's why.
I knew I was missing something on the weekend.
It's the off season and it's the run up to Christmas.
But we did have some Monday news. Little bit of Monday news.
That we did.
A little bit on about the new tyre regs for next year. Don't want to spend too long on it because they've been simplified.
Oh, actually, no, there's some proper news.
Proper news.
Lewis Hamilton is officially World Formula One Drivers' Champion.
Oh, yes, it was the prize giving last week.
Yeah. Which is when he's actually
Officially
given
champion.
the
Yeah.
championship. So there, you heard it here first.
Maybe
Other
Kimi
news.
Räikkönen enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was just going to say other news. Kimi Räikkönen on licensed premises ended up pissed.
Yeah. And talking the ear off of a young Mick Schumacher. Those things.
I did have to send details to one of our American listeners of how to obtain the Kimi Räikkönen endorsed Heartwall long drink in the US, because obviously he wants to try that Kimi effect.
Iceman long drink.
Yeah, it's just called Heartwall long drink now, or in America it's now original long drink.
Okay.
Do you know what? I genuinely thought the pictures of Vettel talking the ear off people, I thought he was talking to Vettel.
Oh no, he was talking to Vettel at one point, but it looked like he was trying to tell a joke. But at one point, he had his arm around Mick Schumacher, and Mick Schumacher was just nodding like, "Yes, please go away from me, strange man."
They all look the same.
No, Vettel's got a moustache.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with that. Movember finished 10 days ago.
I think it must be a tribute to Nigel Mansell because he is quite a Nigel Mansell fan. He likes Nigel Mansell a lot.
Possibly.
Other moustaches are available.
Charlie Chaplin's.
That's gone out of fashion.
I like the idea that he's trolling charity. It's like, so now November's gone. He's like, yeah, look what I could have done.
Yeah.
We'll talk about tyres instead. So Pirelli have released the tyre compound choices for the first 4 races of 2019.
Yeah.
And everything is now simpler because we will see only 3 colours during the course of a weekend.
Good.
White for the harder?
White for the hard,
Yellow?
yellow for the medium, and red for the soft. There are...
Back to 1997.
It is,
Pretty
but
much.
there are 5 different compounds labelled C1 to
No,
C5,
there's not.
C5 being the
There's-
softest.
Yeah, but we
White,
don't
yellow, and red.
Yeah. But you might get to see it on a graphic, I suppose. at
Like
some
the one
point
that
during the
Pirelli
race.
put out
Yeah.
by saying that which of the compounds is going to be which tyre. You'll only
Yeah.
see 3 colours on a weekend, but it'll still be 3 out of 5 tyres that get used.
Yeah, hard, medium, and soft. Yeah.
I suggest to people that they pay fuck all attention to that thing.
Yeah, so just remember, white is hard,
Yeah,
red is soft,
Yeah.
yellow is medium.
yeah.
But the new tyre regulations that have come in and tyre use rules, they've changed a bit.
Yeah.
It's going to be the hard and the medium are the race tyres, and 1 set of each must be used by all teams during the race. And the soft is going to be the qualifying tyre. For the teams that get into the top 10,
That's Q3 then.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
Q3. The teams that get into Q3 will have to return a set of softs that they used in Q3.
Return them.
Return them back to Pirelli. For the 10 other drivers that didn't get into Q3, they get an extra set of the soft tyres effectively to use during the race should they want.
So you've got to use hard, you've got to use medium.
And
And,
if
if,
you're
you're
out-
not in the top 10, you can use soft as well. If
So you could
if you want to
two-stop
do
and
a
use the softest.
two-stop, yeah.
Yeah. Does that make things harder or easier to get your head around?
Slightly convoluted, isn't it?
Yeah, we
I'm
won't
not sure
know.
they've simplified those rules.
They've simplified the colours of the
The
tyres.
compounds, yeah, they simplified. There's only 5 compounds available instead of the 7 that there were last
So
year.
basically, you get tyre tokens now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, God. I thought the engine tokens was hard enough to get my head around.
It was the bloody fucking fuel tokens. That was the worst token manoeuvre, where you got fuel credits back.
Oh, yeah, look, they're lapping now. Well, who's going to pit first and go for it?
Yeah. You got an adjusted time back. It's like, oh, well, Jenson Button's 5th, but technically, if you take all the fuel out, he had 10 laps extra fuel on board in his brawn. or I like to call it the glory days of my life.
Just that 1 year. So yeah, it's gonna make things more tactical. We were talking about this before we started recording. Is it going to be where if you think you're only going to be fast enough to qualify in 10th, do you just back out of it in Q2 and finish 11th? So
is 11th now the best place
depend on
to...
the circuit.
Yeah, you can't. I don't think you can guarantee coming 11th, can you? That's the issue.
No, but I mean, 11th, 12th. Is that the best place to be? Because then you've got an option of using the faster race tyre at some point, whereas the majority of cars ahead of you won't have that.
If it's a one-stop circuit and you've got to use the hard and you've got to use the medium,
you've got to use 2 compounds.
Oh, you've got to use 2 compounds.
Yeah, you can go medium and soft or hard and soft.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely simplified the rules.
I suppose the only thing to think here is
my brain hurts.
The guys in the top 10 will be on the soft compound anyway, but it won't be new. They'll have had a lap on them, yeah? So generally,
because they'll just like now I think they've still kept the rule where you have to use the tyres to start the race that you set your fastest lap in Q2 on if you're in the top 10.
Yeah, so generally, if you're 11th, you go onto the harder tyre anyway if you're going to try and do something clever and run longer. So has it actually helped anyone?
We shall see.
They say that it's been made simpler so that everyone understands that there are 3 tyre compounds.
Yeah, everyone
rather than it was getting a bit daft with
it was stupid.
Ultra hard to ultra soft.
And you never saw the ultra hard.
Was it super hard?
A hyper soft. We had super hard and ultra and hyper soft, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I had super hard, mediums, which were nowhere near the middle, super soft. Mediums, soft,
which were the mediums.
Yeah. Super soft, ultra soft, hyper soft.
Yeah. So at some races, the super soft was the hardest tyre.
Yeah, which was that made no sense at all. It wasn't used in the race at Monaco because it was too hard.
I just don't believe. I know every circuit's different, the weather's different, all that sort of stuff. I don't believe a tyre manufacturer can't be told, we need 3 compounds of tyres. And then you take those to the circuit, and then the teams get told, this is what it is, this is what your pressures have to be for these tyres. I don't believe that we can't just get away with a hard, medium, and soft. And
you mean the same
tyre, regardless of whether you're at Monaco or you're at Silverstone?
Because I fucking surely back in 1992 or something like that, when we did just have soft, medium, and hards.
No, it was just softs and hards. I think that was it.
Hards.
Yeah.
Softs, hards, and qualifying.
I can't remember there being a myriad of fucking different types of soft compound.
No,
they didn't tell us about that sort of stuff.
Maybe not.
I mean, all you knew then was you weren't allowed to use the qualifying tyres, which were really soft.
Yeah,
you weren't allowed to use them for the racing.
Although on the Microprose F1 Manager game, it did let you.
You just had to make many pit stops.
Yes. Yeah, it didn't go well. But yeah, if Pirelli are trying to simplify things, I mean, we'll see how it goes. I mean, we should be due the announcements on what the team's going to be using in Australia, because with it being a flyway race, they've got to give the information within 14 weeks. And the good news is it's less than 14 weeks.
Yeah.
Only just, but so we'll find out the first tyre choices soon, which, as we're scrabbling for off-season news,
it's usually just after January, isn't it? We usually get this sort of stuff.
Usually just after the new year, I think, because everybody goes back to work in Formula One in the new year, don't they?
Yeah.
So
it seems unfair to make them choose the tyres before the regulations have been finalised.
Yeah, it does a little bit.
Yeah.
Because of course, there are going to be new regulations coming in for 2019, which we will
suppose
discuss.
Everyone's in the same boat.
Yeah.
That is true. Anything else going on around F1 that we've noticed?
Andreas Seidel is joining McLaren. Now he was offered the job of head of Porsche Motorsport. I think he was the head of the Formula E team the head of the team that was going into Formula E. But he was offered the job ahead of all of Porsche Motorsport, but he's actually taken a job at McLaren Formula One team. Don't ask me why. I have no idea. And I don't know what job he's going into. Is it Eric Boulier's old position?
I think it might be, yeah. Eater of cakes.
Eater of cake. Well,
Maker of excuses, giver of answers that aren't really answers.
I don't think he's. I don't think he really needs to make excuses, does he? Just yet. But if McLaren are getting somebody in to make excuses, that doesn't bode well, does it?
Not really.
Because didn't McLaren just restructure everything so that they didn't need that Eric Boulier role?
Or is the role still there? And it was Eric Boulier falling on his sword for just about the worst year in the team's history.
No, I think they definitely restructured, which meant that role wasn't available. So it's a bit confusing.
I thought the whole idea was to stop it being so compartmentalised, wasn't it?
Yeah,
to make it
and now
clearer.
now McLaren have pulled in all these people from everywhere. Like obviously James Key coming in is going to be a technical sort of director of some description. You got a head of area like what's his name, Peter Prodromou.
Yeah.
And you've got
Gilda Ferran running the racing side of things.
yeah, exactly. So having another Zach Brown, of course, is the head of the whole thing.
Yeah.
But
And Bob Fernley running the IndyCar program.
yeah, which of course is completely separate to the Formula One, but it just seems too many chiefs. Do you know what I mean? They're gonna ruin it by having too many bosses.
Yeah, it's top-weighted management structure.
Yeah, which never ends well.
No, well, it certainly hasn't done for McLaren under the current regime.
No.
Maybe they need Ron back just as overall boss and micromanager in chief.
I've definitely thought that. Like, there seems to be something that's missing with McLaren, and I can't help think that maybe let's just say you've got all these people that are used to the micromanagement of Ron Dennis.
Yeah.
So those people are used to working in that way. So when somebody comes in and it's not quite as on top of you all the time, that's a way for people to start
Falling back.
Yeah,
Not deliberately, just because their work ethics changed.
Yeah, I mean, the days of you'd never get Ron Dennis handing out Freddo bars. Let's put it that way.
No.
Well, I was amazed. This isn't another fucking opportunity to say that we went to McLaren, but as a painter and decorator, I was amazed how scruffy some of the decorating was in there, and it just didn't. To me, that didn't seem very McLaren-y. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Despite the fact you had to walk down a disinfectant corridor to get into the place.
Yeah, the corridor was there, but like all around the.
But in the meeting room, it wasn't.
Yeah,
as perfect.
Around the lifts and stuff like that. There's a couple of handprints here and there.
Really, like scrapes on walls.
Stuff like
where people have been carrying boxes and marked walls and
stuff that most people would just walk through and see, but stuff that like a painter like myself definitely
notice.
Yeah, that.
Although the main thing that you did notice, which was a very McLaren thing, was as soon as we walked out the lift, a cleaner went in and refluffed the pile on the carpet where we'd been stood on it.
Yeah, and cleaned the lift. But I think that might have been Paul. But
no, I think it was you when we came through the glass lift tube and you saw the 2017 car and
oh, fuck off! I think words.
Nice. the real sort of McLaren how they run the office thing you see in the opening titles to the first episode of Grand Prix Driver, where they've got the carbon fibre board that measures the spaces between chairs in the boardroom to make sure that it's all uniform. That's the McLaren that wins, well, whatever it turns its hand to, not the current McLaren that lets us in.
Actually, the funniest thing about that whole trip was Bambi on ice trying to get a glass of water. It
wasn't a glass of water, it was a coffee.
We were in the quietest place in the world.
Mainly because all 10, 12 of us that were in there were absolutely terrified.
Excuse me.
If you can imagine being in a glass house with a glass bar, with a table with many glasses on it.
Paul knocked it all over.
With glass bottles to make said drinks with. And then you decide to make yourself a cocktail with a hammer.
Well, the thing was, I was picking up something that there was condensation, and it stuck to the saucer.
Oh, I'm quite with you. It was a very nervous day. There was some handshaking going on. I saw that. I was shaking as well. I wanted a glass of water. wasn't brave enough to go and get one. So you were a step ahead of me immediately. But I saw the potential pitfalls.
And I fell down that pit.
Anyway,
Formula One.
Seidel has joined McLaren. We don't know where he's going. What job is it he's doing?
Exactly.
This might be a good thing, or it might not.
It's McLaren. You can never tell. Lewis Hamilton's been pulled up for riding a motorbike too fast.
Pulled up.
At the Jerez test.
At the Jerez Superbike test,
Yeah, where he was testing one of his own
where he was testing
bikes.
one of his own bikes, and
and seeing how fast he could ride it.
yeah.
and dropped it into a gravel trap.
But when he wasn't dropping it into a gravel trap, he was told that he was riding a little bit too fast to be safe. So could he slow down a bit?
And that's when he crashed.
He probably crashed when he was going too slow.
Yeah, this is the thing. He asked people to slow down. Let them do what they want to do at their own comfortable pace.
I think there's more than enough people that would be.
Who told Lewis Hamilton to slow down? Was this man's name was just like, hello, I'm Spanish George Lawrence.
No, what happened was he was tearing it around a track on a bike, and some people were having a conversation, and a guy sidled up to one of the Mercedes guys and went, so what do you think about Kubica coming back after 8 years? And going, 8 fucking years, slow down.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Apparently it was.
You might have a point.
Apparently it was Michael van der Mark who rides in World Superbikes for the factory Yamaha team.
He said, slow down, I don't want you taking my seat.
Probably. Seeing as Lewis Hamilton just happens to have a Yamaha Superbike kicking about in his garage.
He's also
As you
got
do.
a limited edition, is it MV Augusta Lewis Hamilton
Yeah.
edition? Yeah.
Nice work if you can get
I don't
it.
know if he's got one of them, but
That you
it's
can,
got his
you
name
can
on.
purchase one, can't you, with LH44 on it.
Yeah, for ridiculously huge amounts of money.
I'm almost convinced that if there's anything you want now with 44 on it and an LH somewhere, you can probably get it.
Just make it yourself.
You could just pen.
You may get sued if you try and sell it, but then again, have a look at Etsy.com. There's all kinds of stuff on there that's. Chris is now making a pack of LH44 biscuits.
Well,
but,
I was going to.
but the pen doesn't write on the biscuit wrapper. I've had an idea. Seeing as there's not a lot of F1 news about, shall we have a jump cut and a guest?
Why
Sounds
not?
like a good idea.
That is a good
Someone
plan.
who knows what they're talking about.
It's guest time.
For the second week on the trot, we have a guest, and here's a jump cut. Well, as it's the winter and there aren't any more F1 races to talk about until March, we thought we'll get some guests, and we are joined this week by Craig Scarborough, can we call you resident technical expert now?
I think so.
I think I'm an honorary guest now that can be regarded as an Isle of Man resident. Yes, thank you very much.
But not for tax purposes.
No.
Oh, no. I don't earn any money to pay tax, so that's not a problem.
Would you like to buy a jet?
Yeah, apparently there's plenty of spaces at the airport to spare.
Well, yeah.
So, first question is, Craig, 2018 season's finished. What were your opinions? It's the usual start with a broad question.
It was a slightly odd season, wasn't it? Really, I mean, it was there wasn't much in the regulations that was sort of changing on the technical side. So, you would have expected some people to come up with some, maybe some more radical ideas as the year went on to separate them from each other. But really, it was a year where everyone kind of converging on the same sort of ideas. There was lots of are they, aren't they sort of technical rumours going around, a lot of which never really kind of came through in terms of, what are Ferrari doing with the engine, what are Mercedes doing with the engine. And really, most of the talk through the year revolved very much around the Ferrari and the Mercedes battle. Red Bull were obviously there or thereabouts, but never really enough through the year to kind of pick up on the radar much more until the sort of the last few races. But probably in terms of being a fan this year, I think the most fascinating thing was the midfield, which gave, all of the results of the promise that we had over the winter. It's like everyone's going to be really close. And it didn't pan out how we expected in terms of who ended up where, not least because of Force India's sort of odd switch mid-season.
Yeah.
But that midfield season battle this year was very much what I think would kind of made the season for me this year, because I think the rest of it was kind of not dull, but didn't deliver on some of the punch that perhaps we were expecting.
Yeah, I think I can definitely see that. I mean, the main thing this year was certainly with the midfield. It was definitely a closer battle. I mean, Force India had the results to finish fourth if you had both teams together and
Yeah.
be best of the rest. But Hulkenberg actually managing to get a Renault to seventh in the Drivers' Championship standings was a surprise.
Yeah.
So winning the Formula 1.5 trophy.
It is, and I think that was, the promise that Renault have been sort of making noises about for the past couple of years is that we're back, we're really going to put the effort in, and we saw it a bit at the end of last season where they really started to come quite strong, and at points throughout this year, again they look very strong, and we're starting to look like that team that should be pushing forth in the championship, that should be grabbing those places off of, Ferrari, Red Bull and Mercedes, in the races. So I think some of that promise is there, but it just wasn't the thing I kind of lacked with any of the midfield teams, that no one was that consistent, that they were, like the de facto next team. Force India were kind of there, particularly in the second half of the year once they got their money problems sorted out. Haas started off very strongly and, kind of had that mid-season dip, didn't they, for all sorts of reasons, and then a few points taken off them from Monza, and they never really quite recovered the overall season. But then you had like Sauber, which we'd all had banked on being the team that were going to be at the back, particularly in qualifying, were just showing to be very strong, and by the season's end were really amongst those other top teams, which obviously again, as we every time we talk, we then come around to the McLarens and the Williams and sort of our shoulders slope a little bit and go, well, yeah, what are they doing back at that end of the grid?
Yeah.
McLaren seem to have finally found out what the problem was with this year's car now, which, seeing as we're in December.
Yeah, there were some very strange comments, wasn't there? It's one of these, well, we knew what the problem was, but it was we needed a new chassis to fix it, which I don't understand, and is particularly worrying because I can't think of an aero problem that would require a new chassis, and not something you couldn't get away from by modifying other parts. But, I think, again, there's kind of the symptom, there's the cause, and there's the root cause. The symptom obviously was patently obvious to all of us that the car was just awful. The cause was whatever this chassis aero thing was, but I think the root cause still goes much deeper than that at McLaren, and I don't know if they've actually got the self-awareness, or maybe perhaps even the honesty, just to say, look, this is really where we're going wrong at the management level, and that's really is what's causing all of these problems. It's not the fact that we made a miscalculation with the aero or with the chassis or what have you. And I think Williams are another team that are in that situation, but perhaps in Williams' defence, you can see some changes that happened towards the end of last year in terms of sponsorship, drivers and management, and people interfering, that hopefully will mean that Williams can recover that sort of managerial issue they've got and make a bit more of a recovery next year.
Do you think with having George Russell in now that there's Mercedes might help them out a little bit more?
No. And that's not to be sort of dismissive of Mercedes, certainly, because they would be able to. But I think with Paddy Lowe and independent finances and letting the team, the engineers get on with the job, is all that Williams really needed. And I think they're going that direction now. I don't think necessarily that they need Mercedes input. George Russell, again, clearly a fantastic driver. I've had people tipping him to me as the next big thing for many years. I'm far from a driver expert, as you know, but I think there's more things lining up for Williams to give us the hope that there's the potential to improve in 2019 compared perhaps with McLaren, who again you just don't see that ship turning around anytime soon.
It surprises me what you're saying about Williams a little bit, because it looks from the outside like what saved Sauber was Ferrari coming along with their money and their input, and that really seems to have turned things around for them. So wouldn't the same happen for Williams?
Yes. I mean, I think the money is obviously the key thing, and being allowed to spend the money as the experts at the team see fit, rather than being perhaps guided by some external factors. Um, how much Ferrari aided Sauber directly it's one of those very difficult questions. We're never quite sure who Ferrari's favourite son is. Was it Haas this year? Because obviously there was lots of noise about that earlier this season. Is it Sauber? I think Sauber's biggest change would be, again, the money, which always allows a small team to improve. But then you've got the management there. When you see, you've got Simone Resta, you've got obviously Freddie Vasseur, who really, I mean, when you hear some of the anecdotes of what he's been doing at the factory, you realise that has become a very sharply managed team. And that makes all the difference, at any end of the grid. When the management team get a little bit lazy, let things start to slide, as you see with other teams, that's when the performance starts to go away, because it's how you manage a team. You probably could compare every engineer between every team, and I don't think you would end up saying, oh, Team X has got the best engineers. I think all the engineers are probably all of a very good standard, but how they're managed and how they get the money to do what they feel they need to do is really the kind of the crux of what makes an F1 team work really well. And I think Force India have been the example there of a team that know exactly how to do that, year on year now. And even through the issues that they had through this year, you can see that the Force India, in terms of how the engineering side of the team was run, how its strategy was run, maybe some of the driver management issues started to cloud things. Again, not a conversation I want to get involved in, Perez and Ocon, but you see that the management there are the people that are actually helping getting the job done. So I think that's what's critical. I think that's perhaps what could be lacking at McLaren.
It'll be interesting to see what Force India can do with some financial backing now as well.
Well, yes. I mean, I don't want to sort of go straight in with the name dropping, but back at the Spanish Grand Prix, I spoke to lots of the midfield teams for a magazine article that I was doing, and I spoke to Andy Green at Force India. And, kind of the blunt opening question is, there is only the top 2-3 teams, a massive chasm, and then everyone else is locked in a midfield, and no one seems to be jumping the gap. What do you need to do that? And Andy Green was blunt, and he says, sort of 300 engineers and £150 million. And those sort of numbers are being banded around by the Strolls and the people that are now investing into Force India, and they're talking about a bigger factory, more people. So if they can get that, and if they can keep their management ethos without being distracted and doing exactly what they do best, you can see Force India starting to maybe step away from the midfield and being the de facto fourth team. Whether they can close all the way up towards the top three, I mean, I think that certainly in a year or so, that's too big a gap to be jumped. But I think of all of the teams, they're the ones that have got that potential to start to go that direction.
I mean, the one thing about Force India in 2019 we'll actually get to find out the truth about Lance Stroll. Is he as good as his results in lower formula showed, now that he's going to have a really good quality car underneath him?
And a quality teammate.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? There was times, maybe not so much this year, but certainly last year, that he really surprised me. Again, I'm no judge of driver, but you see, I think Monza was one of the classics, wasn't it? Maybe Azerbaijan might have been one of the other ones, albeit very straight liney kind of tracks, but he did put some very mature performances in. So, he's not a complete goon behind the wheel. He knows he's got the maturity to get it all together and to get it to work on the day. So, yeah, maybe he is, I mean, obviously Williams has been a very tough environment for any driver, and I think Sorokin is a litmus test for that as well. So yeah, Stroll could be a lot better than maybe a lot of us rather flippantly give him credit for. But yeah, it's a big year for him and for the team next year, because I think they've got that potential to make a step.
I mean, it's come down to really we've had two bad cars on the grid this year, and potentially it's ruined two F1 drivers' careers. With Van Dorn leaving McLaren as well,
Yeah.
I think it shows just the gap in quality between Van Dorn and Alonso for how they performed over the season with the same hardware underneath them. But that's not to the detriment of Van Dorn because he'd done enough on merit to be in Formula One. It's just that he was. The only way to describe it is let down by a really, really spectacularly bad car.
Yeah, and I mean, that's sadly that's the way that the driver market could go in Formula One. Even just down to one bad performance can be enough to wreck your career, literally, or certainly wreck your season. And I mean, I think the word "let down" is probably the right word for Van Dorn and McLaren. And again, I think it's very much McLaren's problem and not necessarily Van Dorn's. But when you've got someone like Alonso that is just such, I want to use the word professional, but I know in lots of ways that he comes across that he isn't. But in terms of driving and his work ethos, and there's lots of we can be critical of him.
Relentless, a better word.
his ability just to get that car going, in quali and in the races, he surpasses probably what anyone else on the grid possibly could have done with that car like this year. So it's a very bad person to be racing against. But I think Van Dorn's been a little bit hard done by. But as we've seen, people can bounce back from bad years by going away and coming back maybe with the right car, with the right mindset, a bit more maturity, and succeed again. So I don't think it's the last we'll see of him because I think he is a driver that's got some quality about him.
We'll be watching him this weekend in Formula E.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a big step for any driver to go into that category because it's a very different, and you have to be a very adaptable driver. And again, it'll be interesting to see whether he can cope with that change. You've got people like Massa there potentially as well that have got that change to cope with, and I don't know if necessarily all of those drivers have got that ability to do something very different. Particularly, sadly, for Massa, who's obviously at a different stage of his career and his life, whether he can step up to the rather odd challenge of racing electric cars.
Yeah, with 3 points finishes in the 3 double points finishes, I think it was in the first 4 races of 2018. It looked like McLaren were actually going to turn their season around, but the development just seemed to stop. Well, Fernando Alonso publicly said, didn't he, there was no development on the car after Spain. How true was that, and where did McLaren put their development if they weren't putting it on the car?
Well, I mean, I think Alonso's comment maybe is probably a little bit sharper than the truth, but certainly, I mean, we've been used to McLaren having really good development through the season, throwing lots of parts on the car, changing concepts, big things like front wing concepts through the year, and we just didn't see that this year. And that's it's very strange, and it kind of goes back to these comments that there was something fundamental with the car. Again, which I think maybe to do with the way they set up the car with rake and weight shift and what have you. But yeah, I mean, McLaren, I frankly don't know what they were doing this year. They squandered the performance of the Renault engine, and the talent of the drivers was squandered. So I don't understand. Again, when you look at the level of engineers that they've got working there, Pete Prod's still there. I think the problem they've had is they kind of had a bit of a meltdown, didn't they? We lost, we lost Goss, we lost Matt Morris. There's lots of other stuff going on in the background. They're obviously going to lose a big part of the performance team now that Alonso has gone as well. So, again, you look at all these bad things from McLaren, and it's very hard to justify where they were this year. They were up to, it'd be nice if we could, wrap it up with some sugar and say, well, it's because they were doing this, or maybe they were working very hard on the new car, but I don't get the feeling that team as a whole is working all in the right direction at the same time, and that's is worrying because it suggests, as I said earlier, that they haven't worked out what their root cause problems are.
I think it might have come down to giving the wrong kind of chocolate bars out to the staff.
McLaren, you feel like they've had this problem with management since the first time Ron left. This slippery slope's been going on for a long time, hasn't it?
It has. We can point to the Whitmarsh era as a period when the team really did kind of just sit back and go, well, this'll do. And they just kind of sort of wandered a little bit, didn't they? And then Ron came back and tried to kick them into shape, but there was all sorts of other problems. And I think certainly, I don't think Ron's return was totally successful. I think things started to shape up, but I think there were just too many factions in the team by then. And I think where you see them, where they're at now, managerially, they just seem very lost, which is an odd statement to make. Because again, you look at the caliber of some of the people that are there, and you think they must know what's going on. Why? They've got the money, they've got the resources, they've got the engineers, they've got some fantastic drivers. Why can't it come together? And I suppose all we can hope is that they have really focused on 2019, and they've got some up their sleeve that will bring them back. But
let's hope so.
If that was possible.
I mean, talking of 2019, we've seen sort of basics of the new aero regulations. I don't think we've not been allowed to see the final wing designs, but it's all based around making the cars slightly easier to follow for the next 2 years, and then 2021. Apparently, that's going to be the sweeping change, which we think it's going to happen in 2023. Have you seen any of the mock-ups have you seen of next year's aeros?
I've seen nothing from the teams and just a few little bits from the FIA in terms of where they're working towards. Obviously, I've had in the past month a really serious read of the regulations as they stand, as they're published. Now, as we understand that Nick Tombazes, the technical head at the FIA, is going to go away with these regulations and think, well, if I was running a team, which of these rules will I be able to run my ruler through and just go, I can do this, and this is not what they wanted? So there will be a revised set of rules coming out, hopefully to get rid of some of these kind of silly loopholes that continually come up with poorly written regulations. But in terms of what they're aiming for, I think in terms of the overtaking aspect of it, which I think is the bit that everyone will talk about most, with the front wing changes, the rear wing changes, I think they've got some very noble intentions, and there's some very sound science and engineering behind what they're trying to do. And it's about trying to stop the outer part of the front wing creating this outwash, which pushes all of the dirty air of the front tyre around the outside of the car, which means that the wake behind the car is very messy and turbulent across quite a large width. And that doesn't kind of narrow down and clean up for quite some distance behind the car. And this is why the following car can't just simply go up to another car. It's great for slipstreaming, but it's horrible for trying to get the wings to work to create downforce, because you've got so much turbulent air. And because this wake is so wide, you can't simply just move your car slightly to the left or right of the car ahead of you and get your wings to work, because it's a broad spread of turbulence. So changing the front wing is one step towards trying to prevent that. So more of the wake of the front tyres goes into the Coke bottle and gets ingested by the diffuser in the rear wing. And as a result, the wake behind the car is much narrower, which allows the following car to find cleaner air much easier. So what they've tried to do with that, in theory, works. So, there is science behind what they're doing. There is a reason for it. However...
There's always a however.
There's always a however. What we always say when regulations come out of our teams is, the genie is out of the bottle. They know what they want to do with the air, and the regulations give you some scope with some very clever ideas and some very good engineering to actually try to recreate that outwash from the outer part of the front wing, which means that if you just simply converted a 2018 car with a front wing written honestly to the regulations, you would probably find that, the following car may find it a bit easier to overtake, because you will get more grip through the corners, therefore closer as it exits onto the straight and pass. But of course, as with the regulations in the past that have been there to cut down downforce, for example, the teams find the downforce over the winter. So this one is trying to clean the wake up, but the teams will want to recreate that wake because it makes the car more aerodynamically efficient and also makes it harder for someone to overtake you. So they're going to do everything they can to claw that back. So I think you may end up with a bit of a status quo for the next couple of years.
Ground effect is what we need, Craig. Ground effect.
That I mean, again, there's pros and cons to that as well. And as IndyCar has sort of proven this year, it's not as simple as some people. Whenever I tweet,
never is.
Just get rid of the wings and put ground effect on, and it's not that simple. But for the first time ever, the FIA with Ross Brawn and with quite literally a Formula One team that he's created. It's actually FOM he works for, I think, isn't it? Actually, doing CFD, doing wind tunnel work. They've got all the resources to actually think of what are the mechanisms that make overtaking more difficult. What actually is the science behind it, and then think, well, what would the solutions be, and then test those solutions. Because what's always happened with the regulations in the past is someone's had a good idea. Sometimes someone's had a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to something, as it frequently happens.
Yeah.
And then someone else will go, well, this is the solution. And they'll write a set of regulations around that without ever having tested it, without ever having gone back into the regulations to think, well, what's the byproduct of these regulation changes? What are the teams likely to do? And we end up with all these stupid regulations that have allowed loads of weird and odd and obviously counterproductive developments coming in the subsequent year.
Which is one of the reasons why I think FOM took Ross Brawn on, because he was the expert at finding the loopholes.
Well, exactly, and you've got a lot of people there that have been key staff in teams. You've got obviously Nick Tombazes. It's all of the poachers. They're all out there. They know how these rules work. They know how the cars work, and they've got the resources to test this. So while I don't think the 2019 regs may be this complete solution for overtaking, when we get to the 2021 regs, or whenever they do finally come through, the Ross Brawn regs, we may well call them, they should be a proper set of thought through and scientifically tested rules that should improve the sport if the goal is if that's the goal that they've been looking for.
That's not how Formula One works, though.
No, these new rules.
Way before, and it's like, well, why not? Let's give that a try, because nothing else they've ever done has ever really worked. Apart from perhaps 1983 when they got rid of ground effect tunnels, but again, that led to that the path that we're currently on in lots of respects. So maybe that year it was all right, but subsequent years we've kind of felt the pain of those rule changes.
And the new rules in any way, shape or form will not benefit Ferrari. Wink, wink.
Well, to be honest, no, I don't think though. I mean, I know a lot of people still have this FIA Ferrari.
I know, it's Ferrari International Assistance, which is just not true.
I'm completely sure in the past that may have been the case, but certainly how it's worked over the past maybe decade, because the time's moved on now, is that Ferrari have been certainly out of favour for a big chunk of that. And I don't think these regulations are really pointed at any particular team. I think apart from someone that maybe hasn't got the money to go into the wind tunnel and really work some of these solutions, but I think these are fairly benevolent and democratic rule changes. So I don't think we can start to point at teams as who they may benefit.
I understand those words. I just don't understand the order that they come out in. Anybody?
Yeah, I was going to say, so over the course of 2018 then, who impressed you the most with the development? Because we always hear about development race, teams and cars developing, their aero packages, sort of suspension, sort of bringing new parts, especially when it comes into the European season. In your expert opinion, who won the development race as far as 2018 goes?
In terms of development frame parts at the car, I mean, I think the winners there, the people that really impressed me with some of the midfield teams. So I mean, Renault really did work that car very hard through this year. Force India as well, Haas maybe to a slightly lesser degree, but Haas really have been on quite a big journey this year with the car as well in terms of how some of the concepts on it have changed. So they're some of the key teams. I think Sauber was, again, I don't know how much it was throwing parts at the car, just how much of it was some of that sort of just good engineering of how to get the car to work, how to get the strategies working, which is a key part of, what you could argue is development, but much more about race engineering than, the design and development side of things. What perhaps has been a bit disappointing was what Ferrari and Mercedes were up to with their chassis, really, because they didn't really do a massive amount of big updates to either car. Certainly some of Ferrari's mid-season ones were failures by their own admission. But the other thing that was kind of impressed me on the technical side, when you look at the entire grid, was Mercedes in an odd kind of way, because they started the year maybe with a faster car, but they weren't operating it as well. And that allowed Ferrari to really kind of get that early season jump. And then Ferrari really kind of stepped its gear up with its power unit, in that sort of mid-season phase. But Mercedes, without throwing lots of parts at the car, without making lots of big changes, worked through all of these, strategic and tyre issues, and ended up engineering that car to being, the best one on the grid for a big chunk at the back end of the season. I think Ferrari had the opportunity to consolidate that lead sort of late in the summer, sort of around Silverstone time, when they really were looking very, very strong. But they failed to consolidate on that period, just as the point where Mercedes started to understand the tyres a bit better, how the car worked a bit better, and how to work their weekend strategy around as well, which is something that they've been very good at. Certainly throughout this dominant period, particularly this year. I think they really worked out what with what weapons they had, where to use them, the big bang for the weekend. And I think qualifying was one of those areas where they really worked it out. And in the races, they may have looked dominant, but it's because they were managing the race from the front, because they had that advantage. So I think in terms of the really impressive thing has been the Mercedes engineering effort this year.
What's been your opinions on the way that the Honda engine progressed this year? Because we've seen a lot more reliability from Toro Rosso than we did with that engine all the way through the McLaren period.
A bit more reliability.
It could be the understatement of the year, that one. We saw straight away from testing that Honda with Toro Rosso were a very different operation this year. Again, we've got to give Honda credit, despite the issues they had through the McLaren years. They really did bring that engine sort of from nowhere up to par with Renault. And let's face it, Renault had an extra year, and obviously had all these extra years in Formula One as well. And this year, I think they're still developing, and I think that late season spec update was, I think the Type C engine, as they called it, was very much where we're going to see Honda. And so I think they probably haven't quite outformed Renault with the engine itself, and reliability. Might have to go and have a look at the stats, but Renault are still dreadful with reliability, and Honda still have their issues with reliability. But if you looked at those two manufacturers, you would say for 2019, which one would you go for? I think you could take the risk on the Honda to be the better engine next season, because of the slope that they're on, which is upwards, whereas Renault have been on a very flat, if not a horizontal curve since 2014 with these power units, and it doesn't seem to be getting over the performance and the reliability and the drivability and the installation packaging of that power unit. Compared with Ferrari and Mercedes, because Ferrari really have equaled Mercedes. I think there's been points when each of them have had the best power unit, depending on what enforcements the FIA were placing on them, or what steps they were at in the motors development. But Ferrari and Mercedes, you could say is that those power units are very close to each other, and aren't the big reason for the difference in the performance of the cars now.
It should prove to be interesting next year with the Honda unit in the back of an Adrian Newey car.
Yeah, you do wonder what the conversations that have gone on between Adrian and Honda as to what he wants from the power unit and what Honda aren't prepared to compromise on. I'd love to have been on the wall in those meetings. But there is the potential for what have you got to lose if you're running the Honda, if you're running the Renault engine at the moment? McLaren haven't been able to, monopolise in that unit, but you saw, from Red Bull, lots of unreliability. Not all of it was Renault. Some of it was in the Red Bull chassis, but we did see that many more failures on the Renault unit. The performance isn't there. One of the spec updates, we had such poor drivability that they didn't dare run it in the wet. That's not where a team should be after a handful of years under the current power unit regulations. They really should be banging at the door of Ferrari and Renault, not struggling to outpace a late starting Honda program.
Do you think there's any problem, though, that being in an Adrian Newey car, we might have a McLaren Honda situation again, where they're just not packaging the engine properly, and it's the overheating issues and stuff like that?
Again, I mean, this is one of the big issues for any chassis power unit supplier is that balance of packaging, and I think Honda got their hands burnt with what McLaren were asking for a power unit, which I don't think they wanting anything that extreme, but it certainly was a bit too early in that engine's development cycle to be making such compromises. But I think what's more important is, and we've seen that this year, is how the team deal with Honda. Now, I think McLaren did a very bad job of that they didn't really embrace Honda and manage Honda. They let Honda do whatever Honda wanted to do within some of those early sort of size 0 specs that they gave them. So Toro Rosso have had a very different approach, and I've not had a chance to speak to the team too much about exactly how they've done that, but I think they've been much more involved, have a lot more people over in Japan looking after this program and keeping an eye and managing everything. And it's something that Red Bull have got quite good with Renault over these years. And a lot of the improvements in the Renault have been from how Red Bull have managed Renault, which seems somewhat odd in terms of how they prove the engines before they release them and go through this sort of testing cycle at the factory on the full chassis dyno. So I think that is what Red Bull technology, which obviously is the kind of the overriding company that is Adrian Newey heads between Toro Rosso and Red Bull Racing. It's how they're managing Honda in that respect, I think, is more important than squeezing the size of the radiators or the top of the engine too much to fit into an aero concept. So I think they're on the right path there. So again, you could feel fairly confident that it will be better again this year for Honda next year for Honda than it has been this year.
Do you think Renault will miss the feedback then from Red Bull?
Well, going on what Christian Horner had to say about them for most of the season, probably not.
Yeah, there's a couple of aspects to that. Yeah, I'm still confused as to where Renault are in terms of a power unit manufacturer in Formula One, because we saw through the late part of the V8 era, they kind of sort of stepped back and were not taking it easy, but they weren't being aggressive in their program. And it was only really the Red Bull chassis and then the exhaust blowing setup, which obviously was a big piece of work for Renault, but it wasn't the same amount of level of work as them going out and producing a completely new engine in order to take on sort of the might of Ferrari and Mercedes back in that era. And that's followed through to the V6 power unit era. We don't see Renault aggressively going at developing that engine. And that, their mid-season development has always been very, very light. They keep saying, "Oh, we may not even introduce any big updates to the next spec engine that we're releasing out of the 3 we've got." And that confuses me, because when you see what the Renault Enstone operation are doing to try and get that chassis back to competitiveness, you don't see it matched on the Vieri side, which admittedly is the most expensive side. So yeah, I mean, I do worry for Renault in Formula One, and when you haven't got someone like Red Bull nagging them, which they have been doing, and managing them, which they have been doing, I think a lot of the criticism that Red Bull have given towards Renault, some of it I don't think has been warranted, some of it has been misdirected. But it kind of goes pretty much underlined by the fact that Renault really haven't been doing the level of job that I think they're capable of. I think everyone thinks that they would be capable of. They've won championships before, and they should be able to again. But for some reason, there isn't that level of commitment that you would expect.
I mean, it seems to be that sort of Renault's attitude to Formula One all over, because how many times have they pulled out and come back?
Stop-starty.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it seems to be sort of fundamental to it. Now, I was somewhat surprised that they came back in as as an entrant again. It didn't seem to match their general enthusiasm for the sport, but I'm glad they have. Because I think that the Enstone operation being properly funded is again one of those classic aspects of Formula One that needs to always be there for us to keep it. So yeah, again, there does something a little sort of dysfunctional in the background, and I don't entirely understand, the politics and what's working there, but it's certainly holding back their power unit development.
I think to understand Renault's point of view for the whole thing, you need parallel degrees in international relations and business studies at the same time.
Yes, something that I patently lack. So we'll leave that to somebody else to go further.
I'm sure there's other podcasts that talk about things like that. Lee, you've probably got one out of your other 50 shows that you do. What do you think about McLaren going their own way in IndyCar for next year? Well, with the 500, and it's looking more and more like they're going to do a full program for 2020. Do you think that's going to detract from the Formula One side of things, when, to be honest, they most need to concentrate on that?
It doesn't have to detract from the Formula One effort. It's all a case of it's all in the execution, isn't it? So, we already, you can see that McLaren as a group are doing lots of other racing, and they've got their applied technology business, which is doing lots of other work, and does pull people out from Formula One, and it does put people into Formula One as well. So I see no reason with an IndyCar effort, which is very much a race engineering operation, that you could resource that without it having an impact on the Formula One race team or their GT program, for example, or even their automotive program. So I don't think it should. We go back to this kind of management thing. If the management at the top level are trying to, micromanage both operations, then I think that's when you could start to come into some problems, because people are, over in America focusing on that, or focusing on even at Woking, and not focusing on one of the on the F1 operation here in Woking. So yeah, it has the potential to go wrong, but it should be able to be done without any obvious compromise if you've got the cash to do it, which I guess they must have.
Not the skintest of teams on the grid, especially with all the extra Latifi money coming in as well.
Yes, exactly.
Do you think that McLaren will be one of the teams to maybe set up a Formula E team in the future as well, Craig?
That's an interesting question. I mean, they've got the right profile. Obviously, they've got a road car operation which uses a lot of hybrid technology, which is basically electric Formula E technology. They're producing the battery currently, so I imagine that would be something of an obstacle for them. I mean, I see no reason in the fullness of time that McLaren wouldn't become a full manufacturer in that sport if that's where they choose to go. If you look at potential other entrants in Formula E, it seems odd that there isn't a full Japanese entry there. I know we have Nissan, but Nissan, despite being a Japanese manufacturer, that's very much the French operation involved there. So you haven't got your Toyotas and your Hondas there yet, which I find odd. But I think there's lots of potential niche manufacturers like McLaren that could come into that sport and do very well.
Because it's interesting that there are more manufacturers now in Formula E than there are in Formula One. So the manufacturers are obviously looking more at Formula E. So
yes.
Do you think in in the future where we're looking at either sort of like a merger or a split where the garagistas, the McLaren Williamses remain Formula One and all the manufacturers go off to Formula E, or for road relevance?
It's again, this is one of these kind of big unanswered questions that there doesn't appear to be in the FIA to shape motorsport going forwards, because obviously when we're looking at I say road cars, it's not because there's any issue here about road relevance, but if we look at where the world is going, you can't continue just to go around burning fuel for entertainment, because there's not much of it about. The environment is more important than that. And then all the people that potentially could pay for this, be it manufacturers, sponsors, they're, how long, it's sadly, do things like bullfighting. How long can that continue to be socially acceptable for the people that are involved in it and putting money into it? So I think there does need to come at some stage, some thought as to where is motorsport in its elite categories going, and the way it looks at the moment, because of no other reason other than who's doing the best commercial job, is that Formula One have become a kind of a petrol heritage series, run by niche specialist teams and suppliers, maybe not even any manufacturers at all. And Formula E, because of its ability to get across the electric message, it races in city centres, which is appealing to lots of non-serious motorsporty types that will just go there because it's you watch Wimbledon tennis, you'll go and watch the FA Cup, you'll go and watch Formula E because it's on your doorstep. And obviously there's a great marketing message there, and it's so much cheaper than Formula One. So it could go that direction where Formula E becomes the manufacturer playpen, but then you've obviously got to manage how mad do the budgets go if everyone's going to come in and want to get a slice of the cake. But again, from Jean Todt, you're not hearing anything directional or inspirational about what they're thinking to do with motorsport in the next 2 or 3 decades, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess a lot of it depends on who's going to succeed John Todt at the top of the FIA, because he said he's not standing again after this one.
Oh, has he? I missed that. I know he stood unopposed for this current one, and I think he's taken the FIA in a very different direction to what I think a lot of us have been kind of used to. He's been very much focused on the road side, on the safety side. But it's motorsport is a key part of that, and I think it needs to be integral to what you're doing with automotives around the world.
Yeah, no, I was going to say I completely agree with that. I think the road relevance is a part of all motorsport. It's just, but as you say, the way that the world is going at the moment, it just seems to be leaning more heavily towards Formula E, which is where the manufacturers are going. But yeah, I mean, just getting us back on track for Formula One, just going to throw it out there and see how you catch this one. 2019. Who do you expect to make the biggest leap forward in 2019 when you're looking at the rules and regs that we've got at the moment? The great unanswerable question.
Yes. I mean, I think when you're looking at the top 3, I think it will continue to be very close. I think Mercedes will still carry a small advantage. Ferrari will be very close to them. I think Red Bull will be much closer again. It really depends on how the Honda thing shakes out for Red Bull, really. So I don't see any massive change there. Equally, I don't see any other team jumping into that top 3 to give them any kind of aggro on a regular basis. So you've got to look at some of the teams that potentially could make a big step. I think Force India, as we've sort of already spoken about, with the investment and some stability and some expansion, could become a team that make a step. But I think they're already, depending on how you want to count the figures, were the 4th best team anyway.
They finished the year with the same car that they started with and the same drivers, so it was a net 4th. It's just that the points said different.
Yeah, exactly. I still don't quite understand how that works, but we'll leave that to again for the commercial people to argue about. I think the people, then you've got, Renault have got the opportunity to consolidate. So I don't know if they're going to make a big jump, but I think they need to consolidate themselves, as could Haas. who've done a very good job this year. But they've also had that maturing year where they've had all sorts of things thrown at them. We had the pit stop issues, we had the legality issues, we've had everyone poking their fingers at, the ongoing myth about them being a Ferrari team. And I think they've kind of got through some of that. And it's one of those growing pains that every team has to go through when it goes from just being, a midfield entry to a team that are actually being very competitive. So again, I think Haas would be a team that would be, consolidating rather than making a big leap out to becoming the de facto fourth team. And then as you look further back, I think Sauber again, consolidating their position. So when you're looking at someone that's going to make a big leap, I mean, I think Williams have got a potential to make a big step next year, which I think everyone would want to see. It's not just a British thing. I think everyone likes to see the old teams and the established teams, bouncing back from bad times. I think Toro Rosso would be the bigger question that I've got is, where are they going to shake out? Because they've not, in terms of their chassis, by their own admission, they've not really had a very good year this year. I know they've been focusing very much on the Honda relationship, which, as I previously said, they've done a very good job with. But, they're losing James Key to McLaren, which I think in the fullness of time will potentially be a good thing for McLaren, obviously not for Toro Rosso. So you've got to wonder, maybe they're the team that could, disappoint or surprise us. I don't see anything at the moment that's going to that's jumping out to make me think that they're going to, pull a blinder for 2019. So yeah, I guess Williams would be the one that have got the potential to make the big leap, but maybe because they're falling so far behind, it's more evident that they're going to be going forwards.
I worry for Williams a little bit with losing that sponsorship as well. Whatever the Rich Energy deal was supposed to be,
and Martini's going as well.
Yeah.
Yes, and the Strolls obviously moving on with them. So I mean, I've not been directly in touch with the team, but I know some people that were out at some of the later races speaking to them, and they're convinced that they have the budget to do what they need to do next year, and that was confirmed as early as sort of Monza time. So they've obviously got something up their sleeve. I don't know what it is, I'll be honest with you. But if the people on the technical side of the team are convinced that they've got the budget that they need, then you have to guess that it's not just come some marketing spiel, and there is a balance sheet that shows them that they can go and buy the carbon fibre and the titanium and all the other bits and pieces to go and get the job done.
Does that sound like a title sponsor to you then, Craig, or do you just another investor?
No, all I've heard is that they're convinced they've got the budget. So that could be from several small things. I mean, you just don't get title sponsors nowadays. Really, you've got the Rich Energy and Haas deal, but that is obviously something quite odd because of the way that their business model is working at the moment.
Yeah.
But there's not. You can't see big other companies clamoring to come into Formula One at the moment. So I'd be surprised if Williams had sort of snatched that deal. So, well, that sort of deal, should I say. We'll just have to see what colour the car comes out with.
I mean, when you've got someone like Zach Brown saying his main job is to get a title sponsor for McLaren, and after 2 years there still isn't one on the car, then I think it just proves that's the way that the global economy is at the moment, that the money that teams are wanting for title sponsors, companies aren't willing to put that in for adverts in what's becoming more and more of a niche market.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the way the teams fund themselves is totally different from what it was maybe even 10 years ago. As you say, you're not going to get someone just give you that 50 million, 30 million, whatever it may be, to be a title sponsor, unless they have some kind of hook into the team, like technical partnerships. You get lots of the money for the teams. It doesn't even have a sticker on the car. It's people giving them, hardware, software services, what have you, that you don't necessarily see, but obviously all goes into the the balance sheet at some point. So it's hard to spot where some of these teams' money comes from. As you say, you just won't get those big sponsorship deals. But what then maybe they should do, if they aren't beholding to a title sponsor that wants a particular colour scheme, why aren't these teams going out of their way to put some great colour schemes and liveries on these cars? They always look so dark. Compare them to some other categories. Formula E, again, kind of go back to that one. Some of the cars look fantastic with the vinyl wraps and everything. Why do Formula One cars just have to have a couple of kind of vague stripes on them and think that is a livery nowadays?
I do remember going back to the start of Jaguar, they had to go for a different shade of green on the car because the paint they wanted was too heavy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there is always that aspect to it, but what gets people's eyes more? For a second because of the weight of the paint. Or, wow, that car looks really cool.
Yeah.
Let's support them.
Marketing wise, it's got to be Force India, isn't it? At the moment, with the best car, the Pink Panthers. No, everybody knows them as the pink cars, even if you don't watch an awful lot of Formula One.
Friends of mine that watch maybe half an hour of highlights a year know that it's Force India.
Yeah, the pink cars.
Yeah, I mean, it's a clear and obvious colour scheme connects people so much to the team and to a sponsor more than, I mean, I can remember going to, shows, motor racing shows and things in the 80s, and it's like, oh, there's a Marlboro over there, and it's it's team. It's just but it connects people directly with it. So, Force India. I mean, I'm not quite sure what their sponsorship package will be for next year, but they seem to be getting the right idea in terms of the presence on the grid of their brand.
Maple syrup and Mountie shirts.
Yeah. There must be still some Jordan people in there.
Mentioned Williams going forward into 2019. Now, the start of the new season without Rob Smedley. One of the questions that we've been asking all season with his role as head of performance engineering, what was it he was doing?
Yeah.
Because they weren't performing.
Yeah, it's a couple of questions there, isn't there? There's that. What is that role? And obviously, each garage, each car has got such a big team now of race engineers and now what they're calling performance engineers, which are looking at things much more than just about how you would change the wing settings or the suspension settings. We're looking at all the other aspects of weekend strategy, race strategy, setup, and all this sort of stuff. Even mind games with the drivers as well as a sort of an aspect of it. The performance engineer tends to be someone that's been through that process and can kind of glue the two garages together and think of things at team level as well. It sometimes it doesn't. It's not the sort of the headline and the your face on the success that you perhaps always would like it to be. And you've seen a few people move into that role and have kind of sort of gently disappeared from the sport. And I think Rob's gone that way. I don't know. Again, when you look at all the other problems Williams have had, I don't know if Rob Smedley's really had the impact on that team that perhaps he should have or could have. I don't know if that's a failing from him or the team management structure or just the position they've been over these years. But, it certainly ended up being a bit of an ineffective relationship. So I think Williams do need a big shake up on some of the management, and maybe that is a good move for them. I know Rob's very, very popular. He's a really nice guy, but maybe they just need someone else to think about how the team are operating at race weekend, and that is the role that is pivotal in doing that.
Yeah, maybe they should have got a new version of Patrick Head in where he just turns up in the garage, shouts at people, and they get the job done.
Maybe that's what they do need. Maybe it's as simple as someone that simply isn't happy with the status quo, and I think that has been the feeling that you've had with Williams, is that they've been happy where they're at. I think this year it's kind of gone to an extreme, but anyone at the team for the past few years would have argued, well, we're the fourth best team, and it's like, you're drifting though. You're not, it's not, this isn't good enough. It's more like, this will do. And I think that's been the kind of attitude from the team.
Am I making this up, or is Pat Simmons on his way back?
But if he is, it's the first I've heard of it.
Yeah, no, I don't know whether I'm right or not. I thought I remembered hearing something about it.
If he is, I think Paddy Lowe would be deeply disturbed by that news.
Yeah.
I do think that Paddy is the right person in the right job there. So hopefully that there isn't a wobble in the team with the top end of the management, and can keep doing what he needs to be doing there.
Yeah, I can remember an interview with Claire Williams, must be about 3 or 4 years ago now, towards the back end of the season, as you were just saying then, when they were the fourth best team, I think they were the fourth best team. And she was saying,
back then, yeah.
And she was saying that we have to try and consolidate this from the guys behind. Make sure we hold on to this fourth place from the guys who are coming up to us behind. I'm like, hang on a second. If this was an interview with your dad, Frank, some 20 years earlier, he would have been saying, this isn't good enough. We need to push forward for third.
Yeah.
And there wasn't that going forward mentality. It was, well, we're here, but we're quite scared that we might get caught, which just seems a bit, not defeatist, but very negative.
Yeah, and I think with the potential that team has always had, that is something where they've really been struggling. And again, it's down to that management and leadership. I don't think that side of things has really been acted out properly at Williams since sort of 2014, when that money first came in from Martini,
yeah.
And they got his power unit, and they got the calculations right with the car for that year. And really, that was kind of the spike that has really kind of just sort of now drifted every year since. And obviously, and that sort of drift has gone sort of nosediving through 2018, which is sort of very sad to see Williams being the last team on the grid.
Yeah.
Prior to penalties and what have you, but always being the last qualifiers, just something that none of us are really quite prepared for.
Yeah. Fingers crossed they can turn it around for next year, because
so.
Like you say, it's not just the Brits that want to see them back; it's the fan base in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of Formula One. Formula One is a lot about the future and where we're going next. But equally, there's that heritage aspect is a critical part, and classic circuits, classic teams, really need to be retained in the sport.
Maybe with the exception of Monaco. We've been having various debates during the course of the year on it. Is it worth keeping the Monaco Grand Prix on the calendar? Because it just doesn't look like a race anymore.
Well, when you've got cars that are like 6 meters long and 2 meters wide, I mean, you're never going to be able to race around streets, are you?
No.
And I saw there was someone had done some 3D renderings of the cars over the past sort of 40 years, and you see the current Formula One car, a Mercedes Formula One car, is actually longer and wider than the long wheelbase S-Class Mercedes. And that's just absurd. I mean, you wouldn't see them racing around Monaco, would you?
No, of course not.
I know Ross Brawn, one of the things he says is the cars need to be shorter. I think they probably could do with being shorter and narrower as well. But that seems to be the pattern for lots of racing cars. When you look at the LMP1 cars at Le Mans, they're enormous.
Yeah.
And it's like, when did they ever get so big?
Even the Formula E cars as well.
Race.
Yeah, the Formula E cars as well. Even they're so long.
Yes. I mean,
where you think is the back of the car isn't the back of the car. They've got a huge, massive, what looks like an exhaust out the back. Obviously, it's not an exhaust, but yeah,
it's where all the sparks go.
Yeah.
I suppose it's like that balance between having something that works and something that's aesthetically pleasing as well,
and something that's safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things to balance it, but you would find that there's probably maybe 2 or 3 feet of wasted space in a Formula One car in the gearbox simply to make the car long enough to get the aerodynamics to work. So it wouldn't be difficult to rein those cars back in by, you could probably squeeze those cars by almost a meter if you really wanted to on wheelbase. The overhang obviously is a safety thing, and I've got no issue with that. But just the general size of these cars is ridiculous now.
Do you think that would help with reining the aero in as well to make them smaller?
It certainly would. It would certainly really upset the aero. Yes, they'd obviously be tearing their hair out if they were told what they had to do. But again, it's how you shape the entire package, which is obviously, as we said, is what sort of Ross Brawn's trying to get to. all these things can be taken into account if you've got that big view of what's going on.
I think I asked this question last time you were on, but I'm going to ask it to you again. You get a phone call tomorrow saying that you're in charge of making the regulations for the 2021 changes. What does Formula Scarbs look like?
Oh, it depends how wild you want me to go, really.
As wild as you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of things. I mean, I think this whole sort of complicated aero needs to be stripped right back. So I would have almost a kind of an overrided regulation where you can't have overlapping bodywork. So you couldn't have a barge board, for example, that sits in front of another part of the car. And the same with side pods and the wings and everything. So I think that would be the first thing. So the shape of the car is the aerodynamic surface. It's not all these other little knickknacks that they keep sticking on and deciding whether they want to ban them or not. I think the raised nose thing, the raised chassis is just, completely ridiculous. That needs to go as well. When you start then to come back towards, sort of, late 80s, early 90s sort of look of car. And then, as I said, we sort of talked about length. We've talked about, weight as well. I'm very much, an advocate for the halo, and I've never sort of apologized for that. I think it needs to go to the next stage. So I think we do need to put that screen on the front of the car. But again, I've already tweeted. I've got loads of pictures of sort of ideas of what you could and couldn't do.
I bet they go down well.
Yes, well,
don't forget, even Toto Wolff likes the halo now.
A styling sketch with a screen on the car, everyone goes, "Well, that looks really cool." Obviously, the reality is that the driver needs to be able to look through it, and there's lots of other aspects to it. But the sport has to be safe. We potentially could have lost a couple of drivers this year with some freak, what you would regard as freak accidents, but it would have been a head injury that would have killed them. So we do need to be mindful of that. That none of us want to see the sport really lose its popularity from a series of deaths or something. And then the biggest argument would be, what do you do with the power unit, which is probably the most emotive subject, probably of all, even more than the halo, if that's even possible. If I had my dictatorial way, I would probably move Formula One towards what I describe as electric final drive, which kind of keeps it open. So you could have a petrol engine, but that would be
like the LaFerrari.
Yeah, so the petrol engine or the hydrogen fuel cell or the batteries or the little Scalextrics contacts going down into the circuit below you would provide the electricity for the motor to drive the wheels. So that would be what I would like to get towards. And that opens up lots of, potential possibilities for how, motorsport can, take on, sort of the new world of, non-fossil fuels or hyper efficient vehicles, if you want to call it something like that. But being realistic, that's not going to happen for my 2021 regs. So what I would say is let's put in an absolutely tiny 1 litre engine that's an absolute screamer that everyone has virtually the same power from. So you'd need to be a bit careful with what you allow on the regulations, but free up the hybrid aspect of things. Because at the moment, you've got 1,000 horsepower car, but only 160 horsepower is actually recovered energy, which really isn't much to shout about, is it?
16%.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you worked that out, because if you'd asked me that, I'd like to get my calculator out. But, why not recover all this lost energy from the front brakes? Why not recover more from the rear? Why does it have to be 160 horsepower of power that you can apply back to the car? Why is it only 4 megajoules of energy that you can store? Why can't that be unlimited, maybe? And let the engineers work on that, because once you've got that little engine, internal combustion engine working, all the development should be focused on recovering more energy. And these cars would still have 1,000 horsepower, 1,200 horsepower, tons and tons of torque, potentially, 4-wheel drive or at least 4-wheel energy recovery. And, they'd be absolutely fantastic. And with that, you can then start to bring back in some of the active technologies like active suspension, even things like torque vectoring and stuff, which would be really exciting because it will really get the cars to go around the corners really quickly. And it can be construed not to be a driver aid. It wouldn't be traction control. It would just be, a kind of a closed loop where if you're steering this much, you get this much torque vectoring and stuff like that. So, I think the Formula One can be more technically interesting without blowing the budgets, and be a bit more, sort of sustainable into, these future decades before, we really see which direction, engines and vehicles will be going in terms of their power units.
It's always one thing that I wondered about the energy recovery way of doing things since going back to the Kerrs days, that the whole use it or lose it within a lap ethos. I couldn't understand that, because if your car is generating that much potential energy, why waste it if you don't use everything gathered in that lap?
And where does it go?
Where does it go?
Well, I mean, there are a couple of ways they can actually lose excess energy, but basically what they do is stop recovering more energy, which has all sorts of issues with the car in terms of the cooling and the balance of the handling and stuff, even with the brake-by-wire. But yeah, I mean, I never understood why there was, we've never had a cap on internal combustion engine power. Why would you have a cap on hybrid power? If you can put in a 500 kilowatt motor, do it. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why does that? I know there are obviously cost implications, and there does need to be some sensible aspects to the regulations. But I think that area could have been opened up, and I think that's really where we should be going, rather than trying to make these V6 engines sound louder, and create the power from some very odd energy recovery strategies and some very odd combustion technologies. Why not open up some of the simpler stuff, like all of that heat that gets wasted on the front brakes, all the energy is just being thrown away. Why not recover it?
Do you think Formula One is going to be brave enough to make these decisions come for the 2021 regs?
No. I wish I could be more optimistic. I see absolutely no enthusiasm from the FIA, from FOM and Liberty. I think Ross Brawn's pitched a few ideas, but I think they're just kind of comments rather than a strategy. And equally, I don't think the teams are. They like the status quo. They like to, maintain their advantages. So I just don't see anything radical for 2021. We'll have probably a tweaked engine and some much simpler changes to the aero than perhaps we were expecting. Certainly barge boards will be scrapped, and some changes to the wing sizes, but I think that's about as far as it will go. I think if you looked at a 2021 car, they won't be these design concepts that we saw flashed about during the summer, and they'll look much more like a car just from a few years ago than anything sort of radically futuristic or different.
Shame.
Just made me think about the extra energy. Formula E starts this weekend, and obviously we've discussed long and hard about fan boost being a daft idea. How about the new one though, with the attack mode, the Mario Kart zones?
Yeah, I like the idea of it. Now, I always just think I was a bit of a motor racing purist, but I think I'm probably maybe a bit more progressive than I thought I was. You got to remember, Formula E. It will be, we can talk about the technology and all the good messages. It is trying to be an exciting and accessible motorsport, particularly for the younger generation. So why not give the driver the ability to get some performance boost mid-race when you're not having pit stops? And let's face it, pit stops in Formula One for tyres and for fuel have pretty much done nothing for the racing. Because everyone waits to the pit stop and then they just overtake in the pits. Why not give them something else fake in order to have overtake? Now, I'm not a fan of DRS. I think there was part of the DRS concept was right. I think the amount you're able to use it has been ridiculous, and I've always been vocal that it should you should get like 10 DRSs for the whole weekend or something. But this attack mode sounds quite interesting. You've got to go offline, which will slow you down. Which obviously would mean if you're using your attack mode to defend, then you can really be in some trouble. And then you get a yet to be defined period of more performance, which with electric car is so much easier to actually engineer into the package. It'd be very hard to give a Formula One car suddenly an extra 50 horsepower because you have to change the fuel flow, and that has a really big impact on how the engine works. So it's very hard to set an engine around that electric. It's like, just throw more electric at it and it'll do it.
Didn't Williams manage that by just turning the aero off now and again?
Yes. So I like the idea of it. Obviously, we've yet to see it being implemented, and I don't think it gives you enough of a power boost to be a real slam dunk. You'll definitely get an overtake done, which could or could not be a good idea. I don't know yet. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, if you're going to try something like that, let's try it in Formula E, because I think in Formula One it will just look ridiculous.
Does Formula One look at Formula E as a valid threat yet?
Ooh, that I don't know.
Because it feels it at the minute going into this new season. It's starting to feel it like it's a threat.
It's like what by what metric would you do that? If you look at the TV viewers, social media followers, crowd thing, when you look at every possible statistic, you would say, well, no, it's not a patch on Formula One. They've got nothing to be worried about. But that's not to say that I don't believe that it is. It's like, well, then why is everyone talking about Formula E being this threat? And I think it's in the way that they've approached the sport as a whole. It's not just the electric thing. It's how they're all dealing with budgets, how they're dealing with the rules, how they deal with the fans, where they race, is all of these other factors and how they promote the sport that I think they're doing right. And Formula One, for many years, hasn't done right. And I don't think Liberty have quite, got the sweet spot of the promotion of the sport. So I think, there is stuff to be, should we say, there's stuff to be learned from Formula E. I'm never sure if it would ever actually become more popular than Formula One unless Formula One had a really bizarre kind of downturn popularity, which sports don't tend to go out of fashion, really, do they? I'm just trying to think of something.
But when Formula One keeps making it more and more difficult for people to watch the sport, by putting paywalls in front of it and stuff like that, I can't help but think Formula E. Let's just say, like, hypothetically, the new cars, like Gen 2 cars, are going to be really good. They're going to be able to race each other, and they look fantastic. I wonder whether Formula E is like a name away, because I notice Porsche has announced it's going to announce its first driver for the 1920 season.
Right. I didn't catch that. That's really interesting.
And I keep wondering to myself if the fact that they're bigging up the announcement before we've even started this season, is it someone like an Alonso, for instance, that's going to go to Formula E,
like a big name?
Yeah, and is that what Formula E needs? Does it need that marquee driver to jump ship?
I mean, I think you've got the manufacturers there, you've got them, and all of them are doing really good promotion around Formula E as well. So yeah, I mean, I think it could be. I mean, it could be the driver. It could be just some kind of key moment that just really gets people sort of switching on to it. That could make the difference. I mean, certainly you've seen the Alonso factor at Indy, at Le Mans, at Daytona. I mean, all of those events have been very much, kind of core motorsport fan stuff. But in terms of the wider following of motorsport, they know what Le Mans and Indy and Daytona is, but no one's ever really spoken about it on social media as it's going on. It's just like, oh, who won? Oh, right, yeah. And like now, it's like every aspect of those events is now covered because of Alonso. So yeah, it could be something as simple as that. And there's any number of the guys at the top of Formula One could go there and just transform its appeal for people, or get people switched onto it. I think there's still equally a lot that people just will always, particularly motorsport fans, will always find negative about Formula E, and that's fair enough. Some people like loud exhaust, some people like the idea of huge V8s and things. It's not necessarily my cup of tea, but I can understand people do like that. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I think, but equally, I think Formula One and Formula E maybe need to keep an eye on esports, because I think that could be the thing that could absolutely obliterate physical motor racing far more than whether we're burning petrol or charging up batteries, because that really has got probably in some respects already way more viewers than Formula One does.
That's massively depressing. from a man that has another video game podcast, and that I play quite a lot of video games. It's so depressing.
I think potentially in the longer term, I mean, we all sort of, everyone kind of turned their nose up at Robo Race, but, potentially a crossover between, e-racing and or sim racing and live racing, or just, as I say, just, gaming could be a bigger fan draw in the future than than the real thing, which starts to get really confusing for people of my age that think, everything has to be physical and out there. But once there's no real motor racing, where does sim racing go? Where does it develop? I don't know. But yeah, it's, as I say, it's a kind of pivotal time for media as well as the automotive industry, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean the robo racing thing. I suppose if you had like a crossover there, if you didn't have drivers in the cars all of a sudden that were being driven, you could lean on physics a little bit more, couldn't you? It's and without having the fleshy bit to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, I know there were lots of other people trying to start up remotely driven categories as well, where you could have a guy in Brazil racing remotely with a car that's going around Silverstone. There could be a guy in Antarctica. There could be a guy in Woking, just in his flat, racing. And there's millions of people around the world watching this. So it's
Ron Dennis.
It's a very different spectacle.
Nobody wants to see somebody lose a championship because his daughter starts watching Netflix.
The Wi-Fi's gone down. That'd be the new retirement, wouldn't it? No, DNF because of internet connection. Yeah. Never mind.
Yeah, I get that when I'm playing the Codemasters game at least twice a month. Craig, thanks very much for taking time out to join us. It's always great to have you on.
That's my pleasure. It's always fascinating to chat to you guys. You always throw some questions up that I've never thought about.
Like to keep you on your toes. And just to say, have a really good Christmas. We hope to see a lot more of you in 2019. And hopefully hopefully back on this show as well.
Yeah, have a good Christmas, and we'll catch up again when we've got some new cars to talk about.
Yeah, we'll speak to you hopefully sometime round about pre-season testing.
Thanks very much, guys. Thanks
a lot, Craig. See you soon.
See you soon. Bye. Just want to say again, absolutely great to have Craig on the show.
Always is.
Yeah.
Very, very knowledgeable man.
Better than us, and that's why we like having him on, because what are you doing with your hand?
I'm blocking Lee's iPad.
Oh!
Is he watching that porn again?
Yeah.
Right. I can see the reflection of your iPad in your glasses as well.
Can you?
Yeah.
Your eyes aren't that good to see.
No.
So I guess that means it's total shunt time.
Yes, it is.
Oh, I thought I was going to watch porn. Damn
Well,
it.
that's what you were
Come on,
doing.
this is the 15 minutes out of the day where you shouldn't have porn on there.
Well,
Shouldn't being the operative word.
these new iPads, they do split screen, don't they?
They do, yes. But that's so I can watch two different porn videos.
Oh, God, he is doing. I can see that in his glasses.
I've got two eyeballs. And if you just use midgets, then it's just like watching like normal porn.
Can we
like?
I'm sorry for mentioning the porn.
You should have known better, really. If
Yeah.
we're perfectly honest.
It's all Dan's fault.
It's my first day.
I do hope we haven't had this one before. I don't think we have.
Oh, not
No, we
again.
haven't. No, we
Who's
haven't.
it from?
It is from Eric Clarkman.
Are you the Adelaide Grand Prix circuit?
No.
Are you Finland?
No.
That's two of our three guesses gone.
No, it's not. We haven't started yet.
Right.
I was born
Yay.
in 1993.
Okay. So it's something something or someone
25.
fairly current.
Stoffel type age, isn't it?
I think he's younger than that still. Yeah.
Hang on, I'll look it up.
Someone like Carlos Sainz, Danny. Oh no, he's younger than that as well. Danny Kvyat, maybe.
I think he's younger than that.
Yeah, possibly.
Right, carry on.
So it's somebody young but past it.
I was killed because I turned out to be too fast.
I was killed because I turned out to be too fast.
1993.
So things that were banned.
Group
Active suspension.
94 active suspension being
Group
one.
B rally car.
That was around a long time before 1993.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was born, wasn't it? 93. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, active suspension, I reckon.
Yeah.
I provided continuous power. I'd like a guess.
Traction control. Doesn't really provide continuous power.
And it wasn't killed because it was too fast.
I think you might be onto it with the active suspension. Because I mean that did vary the ride height and cars were cornering a lot faster.
Yeah, it did continuous power though. It's an odd way of wording it if that's what it means.
But it kept.
Let's go with it for now.
Kept full lateral power.
Yeah, let's
through
go
corners.
with it for now.
Yeah, active suspension then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You put that down.
go for that for the
Williams
first
active suspension because it was only Williams who used it, wasn't it? That's why it was
Yes.
banned.
Nowadays, I can be found in a Dutch museum.
Oh God, we're back onto what he usually watches on the iPad.
Nowadays, I could be found in a Dutch museum. Okay.
People have properly fucking stepped their difficulty game up.
Yeah.
I'm liking
Yes. Yeah, and we do appreciate this.
this. Yeah.
We need Sean on. You're
Well,
looking.
hang on. Active suspension wasn't born in 93 because 91 and 92 Williams had active suspension.
Right.
I dispose of an infinite ratio. Sorry.
Sorry, what?
I dispose of an infinite ratio.
Sure, I've got one of their albums at home.
Talking
somewhere.
about limited slip differentials in Formula One.
My
Was there ever
dirty.
any kind of torque vector control?
I don't, which is what Sean? Not Sean.
Scarves
Scarves
was
talking about. Yeah. I don't think there was.
I think next
Limited
clue?
slip diff is possible.
Yeah.
Go on.
I'm not convinced vector control shouldn't have been like the next puppet show after
The Muppets.
No,
After Thunderbirds.
after Thunderbirds. My race debut was in Wales.
So that would suggest a rallying thing.
The Rally GB.
Right, well, there's 2 6s here. And
Rally GB used to take part in
hang on,
Wales.
I would
Yeah.
like to
Yeah,
clarify something. Well, actually, I'm not going to clarify. I'm going to muddy the waters. He's wrote 6 down twice.
Right.
Number 1 6.
Yeah.
Or 6A, we'll go with.
Yeah.
My race debut was in Wales.
Yeah.
Okay.
6B.
6-2 or 6B, depending on which way you want to go with it.
Yep.
My track debut was in Wales.
Track debut.
So, but I don't know which one is correct.
I don't
Or
know
whether they were both correct.
You're just saying about Rally GB used to be in Wales. Round about the mid-90s, it was the RAC rally going back to those days.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
It wasn't just in Wales, it was
All over the UK.
it was
yeah.
UK-wide because of the infamous time that we were just outside Sheffield and held up the entirety of the rally on the way to a night stage.
Nice.
That was being shown live on BBC, and they had to delay the show by 20 minutes because all the cars got there late because we'd held them up on the M1 because the guy that was driving the car thought it was a boy racer behind him with all the halogen headlights on the front.
Oh dear.
Whoops. Focus, people.
Track debut, track or race debut.
I don't
in
know
Wales.
of many tracks in Wales, to be honest with you. There's that one that was.
There's one in Anglesey.
Yeah.
There's the new circuit of Wales that hasn't even been built yet.
So something born in 1993 probably didn't debut there. If it was killed soon after for being too fast.
Yeah, I understand. Outside of Anglesey, which I think that's a road circuit anyway. Right,
No, it's an old airfield, I think.
right. I know it's on the PlayStation 2 TT game.
Yes.
Well, it could have been used as a test circuit for a.
I was sure it was public roads around a park or something.
I'd like a guess, please.
Is there any kind of launch control or starting aid that would have got you off the line quicker than they'll accept as human reaction time?
Unless it was at a race course and it's something, because there's horse racing circuits in Wales. Unless it's something
but
that
it's
drives on
This is
grass.
supposed to be motor racing,
Yeah.
motorsport.
Horses are cars too.
No, they're not.
We've got horsepower.
No, they don't.
You're all talk.
Like that. It's quite good.
That was good, actually.
Yeah.
And it made sense.
Yeah.
That's 2 this year. I think we're going to have to defer this next guess, aren't we?
Yeah.
Nope.
Oh.
We threw that rule away.
Thrust SSC.
Oh, that's not a bad shout.
Were they a football team?
No.
Because that could have actually been used on a beach in
I think
Wales.
it probably was, yeah. And it was the abandoned car. With,
Yeah.
Thrust
There was
2.
thrust. One of them got the land speed record, and I think it was Thrust 2.
Can't
and
believe I'm doing this twice in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Considering I usually end up being the villain of this to a certain extent. But if I was you, I might fuck that idea off and go down the path Dan was talking about.
Dan has talked about rallies, launch control, active suspension,
Porn.
launch porn. That is niche.
Because it was too fast.
Hang on.
It's lights out and away they go. Children, avert your eyes.
And it's now in a Dutch museum.
Because it was too fast. I think there might be a future for me in launch porn.
I can hear our listening figures drop from here.
But not as fast as launch porn.
We've already done active suspension. Shall we just say launch control and move on?
Yeah.
We'll say launch control and move on.
I was meant to join a driver who is considered to be the greatest driver of all time.
Considered by whom?
Oh, come on. It's 93 was 7 years before Jenson Button entered Formula One. It can't be by him.
Well, 93 was when McLaren were testing different engines for their McLaren Formula One car. So, before they eventually settled on, it was 93, was it Ford? I think they went for in the end.
Could it be the failed Lamborghini engine? Oh, no, that wasn't.
But it wasn't killed for being too fast, was it?
No, it was.
It wasn't tested in Wales, it was tested in America.
And who would reject an engine because, it's too quick, we might win too many races?
Yeah, it's too fast, yeah.
McLaren these days because they don't know their ass from their elbow.
In 1993, if we are talking Formula One, in 1993, Michael Schumacher was still driving for Benetton alongside Riccardo Patrese. And
I thought you were going to start singing then.
I was making sure I had the right teammate. Martin Brundle was his teammate the year before that.
I was waiting for us to go into a full-on Disney musical number there.
Now, am I pulling this out of my backside, or was there some kind of system that
No, stop it. Put your hand down.
And down, Lee. No one needs your answer right now.
that watched the lights and helped the car launch, drop the clutch when the lights changed?
That would be interesting.
Have I made this up, or was that a real thing?
It's start assist on project cars.
Was that Did that have a track debut in Wales?
Possibly. We've still got a couple more clues before we need to give
Benetton wouldn't have tested in Wales, would they? This is the thing. This is why I think we might not be looking at Formula One, which means it's outside my realms of knowledge slightly.
Should we go on to the next clue?
Can do.
Because I've just seen him flick over to something else on his iPad and.
No, it was just it was all touchscreen related.
Stop googling launch porn.
Googling it, I've just copyrighted it.
If we go back to rally, then Group B was killed because it was too quick.
Fast. But it was born way earlier than 93.
But
Not rally.
Not rally. And we've not been told it's not launch control of some kind. So
Yeah, let's have another clue.
I must specify the answer. I've no fucking idea.
Are we going to have to Google what it is when you tell us?
No, I don't think so. My teammate. Oh, sorry.
This is interesting.
Yeah, Lee's broken, everyone. Hello.
The teammate of the driver from Q7 is British.
What was question 7?
The greatest.
I was meant to join. Oh, the greatest driver of all time.
So the greatest driver of all time with a British teammate.
Well, in 93, a lot of people consider either Ayrton Senna or Michael Schumacher to be the greatest driver of all time. Am I correct if you're saying that, if we're talking Formula One?
Drivers in 93, I would say so, yeah.
Michael Schumacher's teammate, I've already said, was Riccardo Patrese in 93. Senna's teammate in 93 was Mika Hakkinen.
Yeah. Which doesn't help matters.
In 94, Senna's teammate was Damon Hill.
Unless
What exactly was the wording on question 7?
The wording was:
I think we're looking. Sorry, go on.
I was meant to join a driver who is by many considered the greatest driver of all times.
I think it's active suspension on the Williams.
Unless he means Alan Prost, whose teammate in 93 was Damon Hill.
But if the technology was born in 93, then it could have been for the 94 car.
Well, which they had to scrap. No, because not active. Again, just re-correcting myself. Active suspension was around before 93, because the Mansell's championship-winning car was 92, and that had active suspension. It's something from the Williams car, I think, and I don't know why it was tested on a track in Wales. That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
To keep it secret.
I don't know of any tracks in Wales where anybody would test anything.
That's because it's a secret one.
Maybe back then it was just Wales.
Yeah.
They just used Wales roads. There was no internet to report the deaths.
Well, so, some of the early Aston Martins were tested up and down the M1.
You've never driven in Wales. There's still no internet.
I think.
Go on.
Well, I was going to say, I think we're looking for a device that was on the Williams, which was supposed to be on the 94 Williams, which wasn't, which is why it was almost undrivable at the beginning of the 94 season. Which is why he's saying I was supposed to join the greatest driver of all time, and his teammate is British. That would link in with Senna and Hill.
Yeah.
Although in 94, Schumacher's teammate was many people. Schumacher's teammate in 94 was J.J. Leto, Jos Verstappen, and
Johnny Herbert.
Herbert was 95, I think.
I think we're on the right lines with something on the Williams.
Yeah, it's something that was on the Williams that was banned.
Yeah. Next clue.
My ancestors were found in poorly powered cars from the 50s up to the 70s.
So
I still think it's like a limited slip differential, something like that. An LSD, you might call it. Not the drug.
No. Yeah.
But you wouldn't have them in poorly powered cars, would you?
you shouldn't have them in poorly powered cars unless you thought you were going to break them because they were going too slow going up the hill.
I'm going to be lenient on what your answer is here because the answer is quite specific, and I'm quite happy to take the key word of what the answer would be of what this is.
Do we have another clue?
You have 10.
Poorly powered cars from the 50s to the 70s.
Ones that weren't running Ford engines.
Would you like your last clue?
Yes,
Yeah, I
please.
think so.
My constructors nowadays produce HGVs.
Right, so in a Dutch museum, HGVs. So if it's Dutch and a HGV, the only thing I can think of is DAF.
And there's something about infinite ratios in there.
I have another spaffer clue.
I think we're going to need it.
Half listen to flood.
Slip differential. Or 1.5 words.
Unlimited slip differential.
IP differential.
Or just,
Or limited slur.
or just differentials in total.
Or maybe not something less specific.
Vague differentials. I mean, differentials are still there on F1 cars.
Yeah, they have to be. Yeah.
Maybe something less specific, like, I don't know, a component of a car.
Engine?
Oh, fuck knows.
Gearbox. Some kind of automatic gearbox.
Fully automatic gearbox?
I'm thinking is it CVT, the ones where you've got an infinite number of gears.
Oh, the centrifugal gearboxes that ran on the belt. Were they used in Formula One?
Possibly not, because they were too fast.
Auto transmission was used in Formula One for a while.
I think we're kind of close, but I've got a feeling we're not going to get this.
I think didn't Volvo not build the gearboxes for the Formula One cars?
Oh, they might have done, and they make trucks as well.
They did make trucks. They also make cars. I want to say auto gearbox.
I think the amount of times you've wandered really close to this and then ran away in the opposite direction is quite amazing.
It could be so many different things. That's the thing. It could be rear axle, prop shafts, single propelled prop shafts.
Sometimes Confucius just listen to the quiet one.
Dan, listen to Dan.
Launch porn. Are you launch porn? Right, so...
Oh wait, manual.
Quiet one.
Manual.
Anyone would think, remember how I said that it was quite a specific answer?
Yeah.
Anyone would think that Dan might have said it.
Is it CVT?
It is. With absolutely no help whatsoever.
I knew it all along.
the
Right from the first question.
That's a centrifugal gearbox, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the most difficult one I think you've had.
Ever.
I think
Yeah,
so.
I think so.
That and last week's are the two.
But we
hardest
like
ones.
them. They're
Oh
the
yeah,
right
yeah.
ones.
Just gonna say, I think they should be the
benchmark?
standard going forth.
For that.
Difficult, but not too obscure.
Not well. That's pretty obscure.
It's pretty obscure, but we're not talking like drivers who raced one Grand Prix in the 1920s.
No, that's true.
For that person gets an LH44 Lotus biscuit. Just wrote on that.
Like he's bothered.
So who was that from again, Lee?
Eric
Clarkson. Clarkman.
Eric
Clarkman.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eric.
Clarkman.
Thank you very much. No, that's Lee. So if you
Anyone enjoy ASMR?
so
You don't need another podcast, Lee.
if you want to send in a total shunt, you can do that by tweeting a direct message to
Me at a total shunt.
and
On
you-
Twitter.
and you can get in touch with the rest of the show on Twitter by @3legs4wheels or
At Dan Dankleton.
At Flood21.
And at Pablo100. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/3legs4wheels. And
Come and give the page a like. We
give
need
the page a
more
like.
likes.
And keep leaving the reviews on iTunes. We've got lots, but hey, we want more.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone that's left a review or given us a rating. And if you want to hear more of us, Lee's got about 97,000 other podcasts.
Yeah.
Every hour
On the Musty Audio Podcast Network.
Yeah, in fact, there's a brand new one actually. Only because saying this round about Christmas time, things can get a bit funny with people, and there's kind of a one for men, like a parenting one, where if you've had a child lately and you find it a bit fucking weird, then search
Like
for
Dave
Dad.
Daddario.
Like Dave Daddario. Congratulations to Dave and Mrs. Daddario on the birth of Jensen.
Yes.
But yeah, search for Dad on Arrival, and maybe other people have had some of the things that you're thinking at the minute.
And of course, we've got the other show as well for our wonderful Patreon subscribers. That's an extra half hour or so of non-F1 content from us every week. You can find that by subscribing from as little as $1 a month on patreon.com/3legs4wheels.
And we try to talk about anything that's not Formula One or politics,
Yes.
Yes.
which at the moment where we live is very difficult.
It's very massively difficult.
Let's see how that goes, because we're going to record it now. Thanks again to Craig Scarborough for joining us this week.
Legend.
And we'll be back next week, and shall we try and get another guest?
Let's
give
have
it
a go.
Let's have a go. Right, I'm off to go see Def Leppard.
All right, and bye.
So we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.